GWM and Haval have been in Australia for quite some time now, and in this time they have both proved themselves to be contenders against the mainstream big players in the industry. This Haval Jolion Hybrid is the latest to join the ranks, and at just under $41,000 on the road in New South Wales, they're not overly cheap anymore. And speaking of, this model here commands a $7,000 premium over the regular petrol-powered Jolion Ultra. So the question we're posing today is that premium worth it for hybrid power in this SUV, and can this be a genuine contender against something more mainstream like a Toyota RAV4 Hybrid? Let's jump in by looking at the three best things about this Haval Jolion Hybrid, with the first being these funky daytime running lights here. I mean, first of all, they look quite cool in the front here and quite imposing, but they also do a funky start-up little pattern, which I quite like. The second thing that I really like about this Haval Jolion Hybrid comes on the inside, and it's in the form of these buttons here. Because on the regular petrol Jolion, this is a touchpad, but the people over at Haval took feedback from their customers who weren't really a fan of the touchpad and changed these to buttons, which I'm a fan of, and it kind of shows how they take feedback, which is cool. And then lastly, it's this 360-degree camera that you get on the screen, because it's not something you'd expect from a car at this price point. Not only is it fantastic quality, but you also get a plethora of angles to use, which when you're trying to get out of a tight parking space or get into a tight parking space, they work fantastically. And I'm a really big fan. When it comes to the not so good with this Jolion Hybrid, first up is this rotary gear selector. In normal conditions, it works fine, but when it comes to doing tight 3-point turns, you don't really know where you're at because it's just a dial that doesn't have any limits, and I gotta say, I'm not a fan of this. And on the same theme of things that are not so great are these doors. They're called smart doors. I mean, they're keyless entry like most modern cars, but instead of these little panels here, you've got to put your hand behind and then pull back. It's not a deal breaker, but it's just strange when you're kind of used to these ones doing it. And when it comes to lock it, you slide your finger across like that. Again, not the worst thing in the world, but just strange to get used to. And then lastly, these seats just are a little disappointing. They're not as good as something like the MGHS, but then again, they're kind of an outlier in how good those seats are. But these ones don't offer much support in terms of bolstering or lumbar support, and just aren't the most comfortable in the world, so again, I was just a little disappointed by them. On the design front, the Jolion isn't anything overly interesting, but it's still a cool car to look at. Things you'll notice is obviously the daytime running lights that I mentioned before, but also this big chrome grille, which is kind of what we've come to expect from Chinese built cars, because it is definitely a thing over there. There's also these cool blue accents in the headlights, but that's something that's standard across the Jolion range. As standard, the regular petrol Jolions in lower spec forms ride on 17-inch alloy wheels. But if you upgrade to the Ultra Hybrid, you get a set of these bespoke 18 alloys, which are kind of cool if you want to brag to your neighbours about. At the rear of the Jolion, these taillights follow the same theme as those daytime running lights on the front, and it also gets a cool little spoiler. But probably the most noticeable aspect is this big Haval lettering back here, which is quite in your face, but isn't as over the top as something like the BYD. When it comes to the interior of this Jolion, it's actually quite spacious and pretty well appointed. There's soft touch materials across the dash, but you notice up on the door cut here, it looks like leather and it's got stitching, but it's actually quite hard and it's plastic. The same goes on top of the dash. I mean, the style looks nice and upper class, which is nice, but it feels a little cheap if I'm honest. This aluminium trimming, again, quite cool. One of the coolest things I've noticed about this interior though, is the fact that you get two cup holders here, but they're of different sizes. So I guess if you've got like a small energy drink can, as well as a big milkshake, you can drink them both at once. In terms of technology, a wireless charger is standard in the Ultra and Ultra Hybrid models, and you get a 12.3-inch digital cluster behind the steering wheel, but then also a 12.3-inch infotainment screen here. The operating system of this screen is good, and it kind of feels a little like a jailbroken iPhone in the fact that it's so customizable. You can have a lot of skins, a lot of different themes, wallpapers, which is very cool. But then again, it is very complicated. So like for instance, there's volume controls here on the steering wheel, but you won't notice any volume controls here. So if the passenger wants to change the volume without reaching over to the steering wheel, there's about 4 or 5 clicks into sub-menus to adjust the volume, which isn't overly user-friendly. Back here in the second row seating, these seats are just as flat and non-supportive as the front seats. But then again, I'd argue it's probably a good thing, because it means it's easier to fit 3 people across here. And on that point, this seat here, it's amazingly flat, and the floor is perfectly flat. So very easy to sit here. In terms of appointments back here, there's actually a lot of scratchy plastic across the door cards, the armrests are leather, the seats are still leather, so that's nice. You get a pair of air conditioning vents in the back of the center console, as well as a pair of USB-A charging ports. There's a pair of mat pockets in the back of the front seats, and in this armrest here, you get a couple of cup holders. So again, that's nice. But last of all, the panoramic sunroof provides amazing visibility back here. At the back of the Jolion Hybrid, you won't find a power tailgate, but it's not the worst thing in the world. And in terms of boot space, there's 390 litres with the second row of seats up. That's actually interesting because it's down from 430 in the regular petrol Jolion, and that's because of the battery that sits under here. And because of that battery, there's no spare tyre in the back of the Jolion Hybrid. Instead, you'll find a tyre recovery kit. And although towing probably isn't front of mind when buying something like a Jolion Hybrid, it's worth noting that this thing will tow 1.5 tonnes. As for what it costs to keep this Jolion Hybrid on the road, Haval claims a fuel economy of 5 litres per 100 kilometres. We were pleasantly surprised in testing to find that we hit exactly that number of 5 litres per 100 kilometres, which is very good and impressive for an SUV of this size. On the warranty front, GWM offers a 7-year unlimited kilometre plan across all its range of vehicles, which includes this Jolion Hybrid. And in terms of servicing, a 5-year, 70,000 kilometre cap price plan is available, which costs $1,550. As is the case with most hybrid vehicles, it's worth knowing what the Jolion Hybrid is doing when you get it on the road. I mean, it's just human interest, isn't it? So under the bonnet sits a 1.5 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder petrol engine, and by itself, this engine makes 70 kilowatts and 125 newton meters of torque. But then you've got the hybrid element. So beside that engine, still under the bonnet up front, sits an electric motor that's good for 110 kilowatts and 250 newton meters of torque. The combined output here is 139 kilowatts and 375 newton meters of torque, which is actually a decent chunk over the regular petrol Jolion, which only makes 110 kilowatts and 220 newton meters of torque. And on that topic, performance, I'd say it's lackluster, but it's kind of what you'd expect from a mid-size hybrid SUV like this. Haval doesn't actually claim a 0 to 100 figure for this Jolion Hybrid, but it feels somewhere in the 8 to 10 second range. So you're not going to be beating many cars off the lights, if I can put it like that. During independent testing, we found that the Jolion Hybrid's performance greatly varied based on the level of charge in the car's battery. In the first 0 to 100 run, the Jolion Hybrid managed a time of 8.02. In the second run, this jumped to 8.42, and in the last run, this jumped again to 8.84 seconds. On the topic of that petrol engine, it's good to know that this Jolion Hybrid only needs 91 octane to run, which in comparison to something like the MG HS PHEV needs 95, so in the long run, something like this is definitely going to be cheaper. Now that we've got the complexities of that petrol engine out of the way, it's worth diving into the transmission, because again, it's a little bit confusing. So the Jolion is front wheel drive exclusively, as with the rest of the range. But in terms of getting the power there, Haval uses something that they call a dedicated hybrid transmission, which is kind of made up of 2 CVTs, one for low speed and one for high speed. The result is a driving experience similar to what you'd expect with a regular CVT, but there is a bit of a change in the mid-range around 50 to 60 kilometers per hour. Because there's no dedicated EV button around the interior of this Jolion Hybrid, it's a little tricky to work out what it's doing at any given point. But under 40 kilometers an hour, it's either in hybrid or electric only mode. Between 40 and 80, the petrol engine directly drives the wheels, and over 80, it goes into a parallel drive mode where the electric motors assist the petrol engine to keep it at cruise speed, and in turn lowers the fuel economy. In terms of drive modes, the Jolion offers normal, eco, sport and snow. But the majority of the time, you'd probably find yourself navigating between the normal and eco modes, only using sport when you're feeling, a bit sporty, but it doesn't change a whole lot with this car. As normal, the Jolion rides really well actually. It's not firm, it's not too soft. The body roll is definitely evident in the corners, but nothing more than you'd expect from a normal family-friendly SUV. Steering isn't overly direct though, but again, it's not something you'd expect. But in saying that, opting for the sport driving mode within the infotainment screen does stiffen up the steering a bit, but it doesn't do much in the way of controlling the body, so you're still going to experience a bit of roll through the corners. If you were paying attention before, you would have noticed that the power and torque that's produced by the electric motor actually is more than the power and torque that's produced by the turbocharged petrol engine, and this is evident when you're driving it. Off a standing start, you'll notice that the electric motor, it chirps the tyres before the petrol engine can even think about kicking in. This is also evident when you're on the road at speed in not great weather and put your foot down, because it will get a bit of wheel slip, and mashing the throttle out of corners, which I mean isn't recommended in any condition, it will spin the wheels quite heavily. When it comes to safety, it's worth knowing that Haval actually offer the full advanced safety suite across the Jolion range, which again is an impressive thing at this car's price point. This suite includes things like adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist, blind spot assist, rear cross assist, and that fantastic 360-degree camera that you see on the infotainment screen. The adaptive cruise system is actually really good because it will let the car come to the stop, and will again also accelerate, but in saying that you'll need to engage the accelerator, but then it kicks back into gear again like a full adaptive system, it's a sign of an advanced system that's really had some work done on it. One slight issue that I do have with the advanced safety suite in this Jolion Hybrid is the driver monitoring system. Now, it uses a camera mounted on the A-pillar here to make sure a driver isn't distracted, and I mean, it's a great system because we don't need any more distracted drivers than we already got, but it is quite attentive, and even the slightest look down at either the digital cluster or the infotainment screen here, and you'll be met with a lot of beeping and a message here that says please don't stray, with the options yes or no, which feel rather redundant. Though this Haval Jolion Hybrid has only been on the road in Australia for a few months, it does feel like a very grown-up vehicle and is very confident in what it does. But although it does come with a plethora of standard kit, that same standard kit does also come on the regular petrol Jolion Ultra, which is around $7,000 less on the road. So you've really got to ask, is that extra premium worth it for the fuel economy that will probably take a while to make back that $7,000? In my opinion, buyers are probably better off going for the regular petrol Ultra Jolion because that premium will take quite a while to make back. That's at least until government incentives come into force, which may make cars like this a lot cheaper. Those are my thoughts on the Haval Jolion Hybrid. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.